The year is 2001. WWF has managed to survive the Monday Night Wars. Meanwhile, WCW has officially closed its doors, with WCW at death's door, or ECW there to let them in. WWF stands alone on being the last of the big three to be atop the mountain. WWF did it. They beat their competition. They beat WCW, something that they've reminded us about for I don't know about how once or twice a year ever since then. But nevertheless, as now WWF finds himself with a new sort of problem. You see, WWF managed to buy their competition, WCW, and also bought out ECW as well. Oh, and in the case, being able to help out out, Paul Heyman and his legal debts when it comes to ECW. Who so WWF now how has both WCW and ECW, and indeed the fate of both is in Vince McMahon's hands, as he famously said when he appeared on WCW programming on the final episode of Nitro. I still think back at now granted I was not even a year old when this happened, so I have no memory of this. I didn't watch at the time because I was still an infant, but it had to be pretty surreal to see a Vince McMahon, someone who had been competing with WCW for so long, finally appearing on the programming, essentially to do his victory lap. But the victory lap was only just beginning. And I imagine had Eric Bischoff had things gone the same way they were going in like 1996 or 7 and stuff, and Eric Bischoff was the one to appear on WF programming, having bought out the WF, I imagine it probably still would have been equally as shocking. But nevertheless, as he who laughs last truly laughs best, as I get in the words of Vince McMahon, I suppose. And so, WWF had bought out WCW and ECW, who actually at this time the ECW stuff was still kind of pending, so that was going on in the background. But I say that to say, now WWF found themselves with a problem. Now what? What do you do now? I imagine it probably felt like Wile Coyote finally catching the Roadrunner. Okay, I've caught them. I beat my competition. What now? Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, it's time we talk about perhaps one of the most infamous, in a way, one of the most all over the place, one of perhaps the most tone deaf, in a lot of regards, heard storylines in WWF history, the invasion. And yes, last year I talked about the Monday Night Wars. This year I'm talking about the invasion. So how we're going to do this, ironically enough, is similar to what we did last year. So, what I have is the ratings. And now, obviously, there's no other companies to talk about the ratings for. So, what we've done is I've arranged them from the weeks, based on the months. So, you'll see that in just a moment. And it actually looks like I forgot one. And for the ones I have here right now. So great, already off to a great start. Um, but nevertheless, we have the ratings, and we have some notable storylines that were happening within the confines of the invasion and WF at the time. So we're going to go through those and kind of walk through the history of the invasion. And is it truly a bad, very misguided storyline? Or is it a hidden gem that has been misunderstood, at all this time. Let's find out. And also, as an extra treat, I'm going to be watching every single pay per view from within the timeline of the invasion. That's right, you heard me. I'm going to be watching hitting, every single pay per view, that being King of the Ring, Invasion, and SummerSlam, Survivor Series. Now I'm gonna watch all of Survivor Series 2001, and I decided, you know what, I'll throw in Vengeance in there as well. I'll kind of cap things off, but yes, I've thrown hone in Vengeance as well. So we're going to look at every single pay per view from around this time and talk about what's happening in WCW at this time. Or not WCW, WWE or slash WF, but they'll try to convince you that it's WCW. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But now, on to the ratings. Okay, so, as you can see, we have our ratings here. So, we're only doing the months of May and June for this. So, obviously, as I kind of mentioned, we're taking it week by week. So or a couple months at a time. So, we're starting off in May because that's when the Invasion storyline really kicks off. They started so late, obviously, because of WrestleMania 17. So, as you can see, here we have 4.55 for Raw, and then 3.7 for SmackDown. So this is for the whole week. So it starts off with Raw on that Monday, and then ends off with SmackDown on that Friday. So we have Raw at 4.55 and SmackDown at 3.7. We have the next week, the 13th through the 17th, we have Raw at a 4.5 and SmackDown at a 4. For the week of the 20th through the 24th, we have a 4.2 for Raw and then a 3.9 for SmackDown. The week of the 27th to the 31st, though, Raw and SmackDown do the same in terms of ratings. They both scored a 4.2. And then the week of June 3rd through the 7th, Raw does a 4.3 and SmackDown does a 3.9. In June 10th through the 14th, Raw does a 4.1, SmackDown does a 3.2. The week of the 17th through the 21st, Raw does a 4.2 and SmackDown does a 3.6. And finally, to end off June, in the last week of June, Raw does a 4.65 and then SmackDown does a 3.7. So, as I'm noticing, because they have a full list of it, you can check it out here. I think I just had the let me see. Eh, Raw ratings history. Is this it? It, Let me go to my history. Don't worry, I got nothing to hide in terms of my history. But as you can see, yeah, things were up significantly while Raw was still in the Monday Night Wars. Or so you see Raw doing fives and stuff like that. And earlier on in the year, and this one actually shows all five. So it shows Raw, Nitro, Heat, Thunder, and SmackDown. Admittedly, I omitted these numbers from my own chart, like the numbers next to these other numbers, because admittedly these numbers I am not sure what they mean. So I'm not going to pretend that I do. But if someone can fill me in the comments, please do. I would love to know. Uh, but as you can see, things a bit down, and oh wow, that's falling. Great. Let me try refreshing. Hey, okay. Do I have the okay on? Uh, okay. So something's going on with my browser. So I'll have to figure that out. But as you can see, oh, okay, there it is. Just didn't load. But as you can see, things down a little bit from when they were in the Monday Night Wars. So things down to the fours, and they don't go back up to the fives for these 2 months. Now we'll see how the ratings change in the coming months of the invasion. But for now, things not horrible, but not as high as they were. A lot of people attribute that to now that WF was the last one standing and WCW, ECW were no longer in the picture. Now kind of only one singular show to watch. But it's that's kind of been the accepted answer, but I imagine it's also for a number of reasons, and a number of other reasons as well. Well, I'm sure many factors go into viewership and stuff like that, but that's kind of where we are for the time being. All right, so now that the ratings are out of the way, let's see some of the notable stuff happening in WWE. around this time. WF, I should say, around this time. The first one I kind of alluded to at the beginning, that being Shane McMahon now owns WCW, and in terms of the alliance, Shane McMahon is going to be in charge of the WCW brand, and pretty much stealing it from under the nose of his old man, back at the final episode of Nitro. Also a part of the storyline heading into WrestleMania 17 when they fought. So Shane is going to be the main McMahon in charge of WCW. Who get used to hearing McMahon in charge of one of these entities within and within the defector, or not quite defectors, but the invaders, as I meant to say, hey, or as they will come to be known later on. We're not quite there yet, as they'll become to be known later on, the Alliance, but we're not quite there yet. For now, WCW is the only ones really here. ECW has not entered the chat as of yet, but they are on their way. Next up, we have some WCW invaders already. We see one of the notable ones being Lance Storm, who was really like the first major invader from WCW. Even though Lance Storm is also known for his time in ECW, but mainly from WCW, who is Lance Storm coming in, and so we already see some invaders when it comes to WCW, who including someone who makes his debut, DDP, and they immediately he almost kind of kill the gimmick like a little bit of DDP by making him a stalker. So, for the weeks leading up to the reveal, someone had been stalking the Undertaker's wife, Sarah, and eventually the masked man comes out and reveals who it is, and it's DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, the man who was the people's champion in WCW, is now a creepy stalker after the Undertaker's wife, Sarah. At least that was his wife at the time, and DDP, he would go on to have kind of a obsession with Sarah over the coming weeks and months. And at first, it was to gain a tactical edge slash advantage over the Undertaker. And DDP's logic was kind of prison logic, go after the big dog in the yard. But eventually, DDP, he became actually obsessed with the Undertaker's wife. Sarah, even despite having a whole Kimberly at home. But yeah, so DDP, he then kind of loses the plot a little bit, and becomes very much obsessed with the Undertaker. I will probably get into it more as the storyline unfolds, as the invasion storyline unfolds. Undertaker proceeds to beat the crap out of DDP almost every chance he gets. It's thanks for coming to WWE, kid. But the next major thing is WCW start taking over Raw. So they wouldn't go full force with it until a little bit later on. So we're not quite there yet. But WCW, its invaders, would slowly start to kind of take over Raw as their main base. WF mainly held on to SmackDown as their main grounds. Kind of a primordial version of the brand split that they would end up doing the following year. But yeah, so WCW kind of setting up Raw as their setting up Raw as their show, and like I said, as we'll see in the coming weeks and months, they try to really go all in with it. Spoiler alert: it does not end up well, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Next up, though, we have Booker T showing up and attacking Stone Cold. This was a major or this was something pretty much major, a major force coming in for WCW, at least on paper when it comes to Booker T. Now around SummerSlam, maybe not as much so, but we'll get to there when we get to there. But Booker T showing up, attacking Stone Cold, was a pretty big deal. Booker T, very big name in WCW, last WCW World Champion, and so him coming in, going after the top guy in the WWF, Steve Austin, and it it probably the first real sign that, oh, okay, maybe this is going somewhere. A major name in WCW is now in the WWE. Yeah, and hopefully he'll do big stuff, which he kind of does. Most of it happens after the Alliance storyline, uh, uh, but he kind of does as well. Um, but yeah, so Booker T showing up, attacking Austin at King of the Ring, and was pretty major, at least for WCW, at least on paper. But the final thing that we have is that Mike Awesome does become the Hardcore Champion. I believe he's the first of the WCW Invaders to win WWE Championship Gold, and poor Mike Awesome. Unfortunately, a lot of credibility and stuff. Damage because of, ironically enough, WCW, what they did with him with like the Fat Chick Thriller and that 70s guy. It feels like Mike Awesome sadly never really fully recovered from it. I could be wrong, but it kind of seems that way, kind of outside looking in, at least for me. But yeah, so Mike Awesome is here. He does win championship gold. Mike Awesome does not last long in WWF. He eventually leaves, saying he didn't like the experience, and he would wind up coming back for one night only for ECW One Night Stand 2005 when he took on Masato Tanaka, which is a event I have reviewed before. I reviewed it a couple years ago. I reviewed both One Night Stand 2005 and 2006. So if you haven't already, go check out those reviews. But yeah, so Mike Awesome is hardcore champion. On paper, things seem to be off to a good start. We have some WCW invaders. One of them already has W Championship gold. Well, what could possibly go wrong? But we'll get to that later on in the next episode. But as for this episode, that is going to do it for this one. And thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, turn on those post notifications so you know every time I upload a video, so you never miss an upload. And let me know in the comment section below what are your thoughts on the invasion storyline thus far, or even as a whole. Do you think it's one of the weakest W storylines of all time? Let me know. Obviously we'll progress further through that, and I'll give my full opinion when it's all said and done. But for the meantime, not bad start. Hoping that they can keep their momentum, and admittedly, that's a pretty big hope. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace. All right. Hello, citizens of the Nigelverse. It is Niger once again. So, right off the bat, let's address the elephant in the room, whom you can see my eyes as they look, at least to me, they look a little red and a little half closed. No, I wasn't hanging out with RVD or anything like that. It's pretty late. I'm kind of tired, but we're gonna push through anyway because it's time to continue our look at the invasion storyline. It's time for the second episode of the invasion. So if you missed the first episode, here's a brief recap. Pretty much, the invasion technically hasn't started yet. In fact, truth be told, here what we're going to talk about in episode 2 of the invasion here. This is honestly where the invasion really begins, and it's where things really kick off officially in terms of the invasion. In fact, one of the 3 pay-per-views we're looking at this week to tie in is literally Invasion, and now, admittedly, this is kind of an anecdote, just in case I forget to bring it up. I was watching King of the Ring earlier from 2001 for the personal review. That review will be out hopefully by Saturday. Hey, I was confused at first because they were advertising the next pay-per-view as Fully Loaded, so I got confused. I was like, wait, Fully Loaded? Did I miss a pay-per-view? Is Fully Loaded also on the list? No, that's what Invasion turned out to be. Invasion was technically the last Fully Loaded. It's just that since it was Invasion, it was just called, or since the Invasion storyline had officially kicked off, it was just called Invasion. So, it essentially replaced Fully Loaded. So I was like, oh, okay. Also WWE, bring back Fully Loaded. If you're gonna bring back like Bad Blood and stuff like that, bring back Fully Loaded. But Nevertheless, this I guess is where things truly kick off for the invasion. If you remember last time, the seeds were kind of being planted. They were kind of leaving breadcrumbs. We didn't have a full scale invasion just yet, but some signs were there. Shane McMahon was in charge of WCW. He was the owner of WCW, stealing it right from under Vince's nose. It was he already has recruited a few superstars to his cause, such as Test, Lance Storm has showed up, Mike Awesome has showed up as well. I forgot to mention, and I actually put in the notes to bring it up this episode, because I forgot to mention them for June. But Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare, aka part of the part are the natural born thrillers, or I believe themselves were also called the natural born thrillers. But Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare had debuted. This wasn't quite Devil's Advocate Sean O'Hare just yet, or biker Chuck Palumbo, or even Billy and Chuck Palumbo. This was very much based on their kind of persona and their tag team and everything in WCW, but yeah, they had shown up as well. So we already see some of the big names coming over from WCW, or at least as big as they can get. It's because of the very notable omissions, but we'll get to that when we get to that. And we see the that the wheels are kind of turning in terms of an invasion. And WCW is now an entity because of Shane McMahon and everything. And so, where will we go from here, and who will be joining WCW? We will find out. But first, it's time to check out the ratings and see what's going on at this point in time. So we have our ratings for Raw and SmackDown for July through August. So let's see what's going down here. Admittedly, hey, I'm reviewing this week. I'm reviewing Judgment Day, King of the Ring, and Invasion. So we are just a smidge behind in terms of not in terms of where we are in the timeline in terms of pay-per-views versus excuse me, where we are in terms of timeline in the months. But don't worry, we definitely will be caught up eventually. But for the week of July 1st to the 5th, we see that Raw did a 4.65 and SmackDown did a 3.8. July 8th through the 12th, we see that Raw did a 4.7 and SmackDown did a 4. 15th through the 19th, we see that Raw did 5 and SmackDown did 3.9. 22nd through the 26th, we see that Raw did a 5.4 and SmackDown did a 4.3. And then ending off July, beginning into August, we see Raw does a 5.7, and then SmackDown does a 4.2, 4.7, I should say. The 5th through the 9th, however, Raw does 5.4, and then SmackDown does a 4.2. The 12th through the 16th, Raw does a 5.2, and SmackDown does a 4.3. August 19th through the 23rd, we see Raw does a 5.15, and SmackDown does a 4.3. And then and then to end off August, the 26th through the 30th, we see that Raw does a 4.8 and SmackDown does a 3.9. So, numbers are, for the most part, kind of up a little bit. At least more so on the Raw side. The SmackDown side, compared to last time, looks like they're staying about the same. But Raw, you can see the numbers are kind of up. Remember, if you remember from the ratings from last time, and also worth apologizing for this episode coming out so late in the week. It was supposed to come out much earlier in the week. We should hopefully be back on track next week when it comes to the invasion episodes. I want to try to get them out on Mondays, but we were a little late this week. But as you can see, yeah, Raw is now cracking above 5. But remember, they weren't even doing that last time. So things for the most part are up. It looks like hey, compared to where we were for May and June of 2001. That is. Okay, so now that the ratings are out of the way, let's see what's going down here. So first of all, this is when we're officially, and I can get rid of this. Now that we're full swing into the actual invasion, now that WCW has invaded, it Raw quickly becomes kind of the WCW show, or where the alliance hangs out, and more on the actual alliance later on and what that means. But for now, Raw more so kind of belongs to WCW. SmackDown is more so where Team WF goes. So so you can tell. They're kind of testing the waters for the brand splits, but they're not full, but they wouldn't obviously fully commit to the brand splits until the next year here. But for now, kind of testing it out, and apparently they thought about doing a brand extension for WCW, who in fact looking up here. Yeah, here we go. I'll make sure I have the actual excuse me, make sure I have the actual article in front of me so I can reference it. But they're kind of testing the waters for a brand extension for WCW, including on the July 2nd episode of Raw, where the last 20 minutes were dedicated to WCW, and they went apparently. And they went all out with it. Hit Paul Heyman and Jim Ross were replaced with Scott Hudson and Arn Anderson. And no Mike Tenay, no Tony Schiavone. He nothing like that. Okay, yeah, I think by this point those two had moved on though. But in fact, I think nah, because TNA wasn't until 2002. I might be getting the timeline mixed up. My tired brain might be getting the timeline mixed up, but nevertheless, so they swapped them out. Oh, and they had the main event of Raw be Buff Bagwell versus Booker T for the World Championship. And afterwards, the WF kind of jumped the WCW guys, more specifically Booker T, or uh, or attacking Austin back at King of the Ring, which we'll get to when we review that. But yeah, so they gave them that spot there to kind of test that out, and test failed because Buff Bagwell versus Booker T is considered to be one of the worst matches ever, one of the worst main events ever, or unfortunately. It's been it's been speculated, it's been debated whether or not whether or not this match was doomed for failure. Buff Bagwell believes that it was, especially because as they were in Tacoma, Washington, which is known for being very pro WWF and very anti WCW, who and apparently, a lot of people hated the match a lot, and the audience definitely ripped the match apart, saying it was boring, it was bad, and everything. And and, and so it's speculated that the match was set up to fail, uh, especially with it taking place in Washington and not say Atlanta, where Buff Bagwell talked about it. I'm seeing this in the wiki article here. Or talked about it with Stone Cold in 2015. He talked about why were we in Tacoma, Washington, which is very pro WF, when we could have been in Atlanta, uh, which would be more pro WCW. Who also having that bad of a match, I think also didn't help matters. Do I think it was set up to fail? That's a possibility. He, but he, but for them to go all out with swapping out the announcers and giving it like the WCW banner, I imagine probably wanted some level of success out of it. That's kind of just my theory. Would I put it past WWE, WF slash Vince McMahon to intentionally make WCW look bad at in the segment? Not really. I definitely wouldn't put it past them. Wouldn't be the last time. Also, as the rest of the invasion storyline will turn out to be, but we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, so unfortunately that was a flop. But also in the midst of this, WCW turns heel. So the WCW side of things, which are kind of more so face because Mr. McMahon was the heel, he was aligning himself with Steve Austin and Triple H, which unfortunately at this point Triple H has torn his quad. So Triple H ends up missing the whole dang invasion storyline, but he tore the match. He tore the match. He tore his quad during the tag team title match between himself and Austin, aka the two-man power trip, against when they defended the tag titles against Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho. No, that was a match where Triple H tore his quad, so Triple H would be out pretty much for the rest of 2001. Wouldn't return until the Madison Square Garden in 20. Ooh, my goodness, I cannot speak tonight. Wouldn't return until WWF was in Madison Square Garden in 2002, where he had the big return with the big ovation. Very iconic, very legendary moment, especially for Triple H's career. But yeah, so Triple H was out for the rest of 2001 on and so a major player for WF would be out for the entire invasion. And a major player being out for the invasion, get used to hearing that phrase because it's going to come up a lot. But yeah, so Triple H was out, but yeah, so Vince was aligned with them. But during the course of the storyline, especially because the fans had kind of started to turn on the WF, not WF, the WCW side. WCW were now how being kind of positioned as heels, like invading the WWF and trying to take the WWF by force and everything, and which fair enough, I guess. And again, and again, and pretty much shows what Vince really thought of WCW, but 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 yeah, so now they are heels. But they're not the only ones because now ECW also enters the fray. At first it was just WCW, but then on the on the July 9th episode, and I'll actually read this section so you can kind of get a grasp of what's going on. Or actually, it's kind of a long segment, and but pretty much it was a handicap between Kane, Mike Awesome, and Lance Storm. Where I'm kind of bold for Mike Awesome to be on the WCW side, considering how WCW kind of treated him, at least in terms of at least in terms of character and everything. Lest we forget, they made him the fat chick thriller and that 70s guy. Nothing against the larger ladies. You are all beautiful, but it very much was not befitting uh, the career killer, the ultimate badass, the gladiator that was Mike Awesome. But anyway, during the match, Jericho did make it a straight up tag match, but RBD, Tommy Dreamer showed up, um, and then eventually the Dudley Boys, Taz, Just Incredible, Rhino, and Raven would all turn on WF and defect towards the ECW side, as well as Paul Heyman, which it makes sense for those guys in specific, that being Raven, Just Incredible, Taz, the Dudley Boys, both Taz and Just Incredible, and Raven and Rhino. All being former ECW champions, and makes sense for them to go to the ECW side. But yeah, ECW, who is now a part of the Invader, hers, and And it seemed at first that WF and WCW are going to unite against ECW, but swerve. WCW joins up with ECW to officially form the alliance, and Stephanie McMahon and becomes the owner of ECW. So you have Shane McMahon in charge of WCW, and you have Stephanie McMahon in charge of ECW. Let me repeat myself one more time. Shane McMahon is in charge of WCW. Stephanie McMahon is in charge of ECW. Are you starting to notice a pattern here? But yeah, so the McMahon kids are rebelling against their dad and are leading the charge of the alliance to pretty much take out the WWF, and we will see where things lead from there. So, now both McMahons are in on it, and now we got full scale invaders, and so now WWF is essentially fighting a war, a civil war of sort, or it's within their own company with these invaders. I don't know if you necessarily consider it a civil war or but nevertheless, uh, but Vince McMahon and needs someone to lead the charge against WCW and ECW, aka the Alliance, and now that they're joined up, I can just call them the Alliance and it not feel weird because we hadn't gotten there yet. Now I can finally comfortably call them the Alliance. But now Vince McMahon needs someone to lead the Alliance. He can't have Triple H doing it because Triple H is out. Although I do wonder if Triple H hadn't gotten injured, what side would he have been on? Like, would he have joined the ECW side, or more so the Alliance side? Hey, if Triple H had joined, it'd make about as much sense as some of the other defectors, but Vince needs someone to lead the charge. He needs Stone Cold Steve Austin, but not this Stone Cold Steve Austin. No, he doesn't need the Stone Cold Steve Austin who's been whiny, paranoid, and trying to hug and kiss up to Vince and trying to be buddy buddy with him. No, Vince needs the old Stone Cold, the one who kicked ass, took no BS from anybody, the one who made Vince McMahon's life a living hell, the one who was the tough SOB, DTA, don't trust anyone. He needs that Steve Austin, and and eventually Steve Austin at first does not want to embrace that. He leaves for a little bit, but eventually as WF mounts the offensive against the Alliance, so all of a sudden it does, and because Steve Austin at this point they're showing segments of him like in a bar and everything, it ignites the old Stone Cold, and Stone Cold eventually comes back. The old Stone Cold is back. So now that the old Stone Cold is back, and now that Stone Cold is the SOB badass again, and now I guess it makes sense hence for it to be the perfect time for him to turn on Team WF and join the Alliance himself. Yep. So at the Invasion pay-per-view, Austin betrays the WF and joins up with the Alliance. Stone Cold Steve Austin and joins up with the Alliance, which, let me remind you, consists of Team WCW and ECW. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a part of that. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the guy who famously, a big part of his story is being let go from WCW for not being marketable enough. And for being kind of boring and everything, and, which Austin himself even kind of admit it's the case. But hey, don't let kayfabe get in the way of, or don't let a good story get, or I forget exactly how the catchphrase goes. Don't let the truth stop kayfabe or something like that. I forget exactly how the quote goes. I imagine if I was a lot more awake and or alert, I'd probably remember but yeah, so Steve Austin, the guy who was famously, oops, sorry, Mr. Mike, the guy who was famously, he let go. So, hey, you can't cut the mustard. You're out of here from WCW. The guy who didn't last that long in ECW, although we did who see kind of the seeds of the Stone Cold character in ECW. He ends up ultimately spending a cup of coffee there, but it's a very important cup of coffee, and I'm sure a very strong cup of coffee. But that guy who goes through WCW, goes through ECW, the guy who really finds his success in the WWF, being part of the WWF, cutting the Austin 316 promo, becoming the top star in the Attitude Era, helping usher in the Attitude Era. That guy betrays the WWF and joins up with Team WCW, aka or the Alliance, which also consists of WCW, who are the ones who put him on his ass in the first place. Makes sense to me. Does it not make sense? It makes perfect sense to me. But yeah, so Austin is now part of Team WF, or not part of Team WF. He's a part of the Alliance. But you know who does come back and ultimately joins Team WF? The Rock. So The Rock, who was suspended in kayfabe, which is pretty much just code for him filming the Scorpion King. He comes back. He ultimately joins up with Team WF. He makes it seem like he's going to join Team WCW at first, but instead he winds up joining Team WF. Although at this point, Austin's already in the alliance, might as well make sense for The Rock to join as well. But ultimately, The Rock sticks true to the WWF, and so The Rock is now back in the equation, and we'll see how that pans out. Kurt Angle wins the WCW World Championship from Booker T. He wins it at uh, I believe. Let me see exactly when well, Kurt Angle won the World Championship. Uh, uh, it was on the July 26th episode of SmackDown. Okay. Hey, it's the same episode where Shane McMahon extended the invitation to The Rock to potentially join the Alliance, but ultimately, of course, he doesn't. Angle wins the World Championship from Booker T. And then Booker T wins it back just in time to lose it to The Rock at SummerSlam. Yeah, yay, hey Alliance, yay WCW, but there's that, and then finally this one, I get. I guess important to some extent, but not quite as much as the other ones. Rhino does spear Chris Jericho through the SmackDown set on the uh, uh, August 9th episode. Hold, uh, hold, Rhino spears Jericho through the set and they had to replace it, and they replaced it with the iconic SmackDown fist set design. So, that's a cool historical footnote. I've always been a very big fan of that set, as are a lot of people. But yeah, so that's where things are in terms of the invasion. So the alliance is officially formed, and they're already kind of messing up. Austin is now the leader of the alliance, and for whatever reason, The Rock is back in the fold. At this point, Team WF has the WCW World Championship, so that's a big blow to the alliance, and we'll see how things progress from here. Here, of course, the next episode will be September and October, and of course, we'll review the pay-per-views around that time as well. But in the meantime, that is going to do it for this review, or not this review. That is going to do it for you. You can tell it's time for bed, but that's going to do it for this episode of The Invasion. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor. Like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, turn on those post notifications so you know every time I upload videos so you never miss an upload, and let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on The Invasion and my coverage of it so far. Are you enjoying it? Is there anything I missed? If there's anything crucial that I miss at all in terms of the story and where we are, or something that I should bring up, or something you want me to draw more attention to, please, please, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Your feedback will really help out, and also let me know what you guys want to see in the future if I decide to do another one of these. I did the Monday Night Wars last year. I'm doing the Invasion this year. Or if there's any more of these types of coverage that you guys want to see from me, please feel free to let me know in the comments. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace. Hello, citizens of the Nigelverse. It's Niger once again, and this is going to be another episode of the Invasion storyline. Really quickly, let me give you a game plan of what's going to be going down on the channel this week in terms of upload. So, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We have a lot to do. This week, we have a lot to do for the channel. Today, and I say today because it's being uploaded today, Wednesday. By the time this is uploaded, it will be Wednesday morning. This video in particular is going up Wednesday morning, but I'm recording this Tuesday night. But nevertheless, so today will be episodes 1 and 2, or not episodes 1 and 2, episodes 3 and 4, I should say, of the Invasion storyline. So that will officially be wrapping up today, and then and so later on this afternoon, I'm hoping for around 12 or so, around 12 noon, will be episode 4 of the Invasion to finally wrap that up, put that to bed. Episodes 3 and 4 to wrap up the Invasion storyline will be today, and then later on tonight will be my review of AEW / New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door. We're getting back into the modern pay-per-view / premium live event on the WWE side of things. We're getting into so we're gonna be getting back to those. And then tomorrow is going to be the next 2 pay-per-views. So, in terms of the Invasion timeline, we have 6 pay-per-views left. So we still have to review SummerSlam, Unforgiven, and No Mercy, Rebellion, Survivor Series, and Vengeance. Yes, technically Vengeance takes place after the events of the Invasion storyline. That's pretty much the Invasion wraps up at Survivor Series, but I'm still gonna throw it in there anyway, just as a little extra bonus, especially because it's pretty much kind of the fallout, or what happens in the aftermath of the invasion, and we will be throwing in Vengeance as well. So how are we gonna do this? As I mentioned, uh, today will be episodes 3 and 4 of the invasion, and then AEW New Japan Forbidden Door later on tonight. Then tomorrow, aka Thursday, will be the next 2 pay-per-views, that being SummerSlam and Unforgiven, and then we'll also do a reaction video because I haven't done one since we did the AEW Dream Match card. So I want to do another reaction video. Like I said, I'm not fully transitioning my channel into doing reaction videos, but I'll try to sprinkle some in whenever I can. And admittedly, for those of you who are kind of more in the music scene, more specifically like the rap hip hop side of things, you might have noticed some stuff going down there, especially with Drake and coming after certain reactors such as like Screwface John. And then there's a whole situation with Big Zoo and Mike Righteous. So, admittedly, Big Zoo and Cliff Beats as well. Apparently taking him to court. So I'm a little bit scared to do a lot of reaction content. I'm hoping that I don't run into issues like that, especially with YouTube and its copyright system, stuff like that being notoriously very broken. Um, So I'm gonna try not to run afoul of that, but admittedly, it's a bit of a tightrope. But that's gonna be the agenda for Thursday. Then Friday will be next two pay-per-view reviews, that being, or at least for the invasion, that being No Mercy and Rebellion, and then as well as uh a review of NXT Heatwave. And then Saturday we're going to do a Reddit video. I haven't done a Reddit video in a while. Oh um so we're going to be doing another Reddit video. Admittedly, which Reddit video uh, or which subreddit I'm looking at is still to be determined. But we'll be doing that on Saturday, and we're going to be adding a little twist to it. But you'll see what I mean by that when we get to Saturday, and then Sunday. Hopefully, we'll be able to finish up with the last two invasion pay-per-views in the storyline to finally close the book and finish our story of the invasion. That being Survivor Series and Vengeance. So if everything goes according to plan, and I'm very much hoping that it does, and I will do everything in my power to ensure that it does. Hopefully by this week, we have quite a bit of content, but we'll be wrapping up the invasion storyline, and we'll be doing some Marvel reviews, and we'll be doing some other stuff as well to kind of break up the monotony of constant reviews and stuff like that. But now, but yeah, so that's the plan for this week. And like I said, I'm gonna try my best to do all of that. If it means I upload much later than usual, well, then so be it. I'll try not to upload too late. Like, hey, I try not to upload. My rule of thumb is I try not to go past 10 o'clock. I've had to do it a couple times, but thankfully, I haven't had to upload past 10 o'clock too often, mainly because by 10 o'clock, a lot of people are asleep. A lot of people, I'm sure a lot of you watching have work, have jobs, stuff like that. So maybe some of you are in school, well, so you don't want to video super late. But if you're a night owl like me, there's a good chance you're probably still up watching the video anyway. But nevertheless, of for the sake of not interrupting your sleep or having it be too late, I'm gonna try not to upload past 10 o'clock. If I have to, I will, but we'll try not to do that, and I'll try to do more morning/afternoon upload, so it's not like video after video, like doing a video and then another video an hour later, or like another video 30 minutes later or so. We're gonna try to kind of even things out and kind of spread things out a little bit. But now that I've talked your ear off when it comes to that, it's time for the next episode of the invasion. So, if you remember from last time, The Rock is back in WF. Austin is now the leader of the Alliance. Why, I still don't know. Oh, and uh WF is now fully entrenched in the battle with the alliance, that being WCW and ECW. So how will things continue to unfold for both sides? Let's find out in this episode. So of course, if you've seen episodes 1 and 2 already, you kind of have an idea of how this works essentially. But if you haven't, first of all, I highly recommend that you do that. But also, just in case you don't want to, pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the ratings beforehand when it comes to that. And then I will talk about some notable storylines, kind of what's going on in the company around that time. So without further ado, let's get right into it with our ratings. Okay, so as you can see here, we have our ratings here. So the week of September 2nd through the 6th, Raw did a 4.6 in terms of ratings. Meanwhile, SmackDown did a 3.4. The week of the 9th through the 13th, Raw did a 4.65. SmackDown did a 3.6. You're gonna notice these double arrows here. We do have the original site where I got the ratings from, so we will go through those and explain what that means. Then the week of the 16th to the 20th, Raw does a 4.8 and SmackDown does a 3.9. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I think I almost swallowed a hair. Her downsides of having a mustache. But the week of the 30th through October the 4th, so the end of September leading into October, Raw does a 4.4, SmackDown does a 3.7. The week of the 7th through the 11th, Raw does a 4.5, SmackDown does a 3.9. The week of the 14th through the 18th, Raw does a 4.1 and SmackDown does a 3.6. Uh, Excuse me. And then the week of the 21st to the 25th, Raw does a 3.9 and SmackDown does a 4. And then the final week of October leading into November. So October the 28th leading into November 1st, Raw does a 4.1 and then SmackDown does a 3.9. So, first of all, let's address the arrows. Oh, so we have a nice little chart here, which now lets me know what these kind of parentheses here mean. For the parentheses, it says share. Admittedly, I'm not entirely sure what that means, but as for the arrows, we have the singular arrow here, which I actually think I forgot to include on the chart. But we have the singular arrow. That's because that was the Labor Day episode. Of course, Labor Day. First of all, Labor Day coming up next week, but also, of course, it's the first Monday of September. So that's the Labor Day episode. As for the double arrows and the triple arrows here, the double arrows here, as you can see, it says it's live edition airing after the September 11th terrorist attacks, and we will get to that when we get to when we talk about our notable storylines. It wasn't really, it sadly, was not a storyline. It very much was real, but we're still going to talk about it. But it was a SmackDown right after the September 11th attacks, so it has double arrows there. And then the triple arrows, it says preempted, I should say. He preempted due to the terrorist attacks. So I imagine that means they didn't air Sunday Night Heat that week, or didn't film Sunday Night Heat due to the terrorist attacks, which is understandable. But nevertheless, as we see, the triple arrows and the double arrows there. So that's in regards to the attacks. But the other thing of note is that for September and October, Raw manages to stay within the high fours, whereas the only time they really drop down below a four at all is the week of the 21st to the 25th. Otherwise, with the exception of these two, Raw manages, and I guess to an extent this, Raw manages to stay on the higher end of the fours. Uh, Meanwhile, SmackDown mainly stays within the three. He's with a couple exceptions, and they stay within the high threes. He's So there's this exception, and then there's this week which ironically is the week Raw goes below the four. Is the week SmackDown actually does the four, but otherwise SmackDown manages to stay just within the high threes, but doesn't crack above a four with the exception of this one week. Okay, so for our notable storylines for this time period in WWE or WF, I should say. The first is not a storyline, but something that is very much real that really happened. So, we mentioned the September 11th attacks in our ratings there. On the 13th, they had the first SmackDown post attack. In fact, I believe that was, if I'm not mistaken, it was one of the first like major public gatherings since the attacks. And for that particular episode of SmackDown, the storyline between the Alliance and the WF was or the Alliance versus the WF was placed on hold for the week. They decided they would dedicate that episode to talking about the attacks and very much sending the message we are not afraid, that being America, as America was still reeling from the attacks. So the storyline was placed on hold for that week. We saw Alliance superstars and regular WF superstars are just kind of side by side in kind of the show of unity when it came to this real life issue. Now, I'll, uh, I'll admittedly, despite, I will say, hey, all like conspiracy theories and everything about the September 11th attacks aside, I think putting the storyline on hold for the time being for that episode and sending that message, I think very much was, in my opinion, was the right thing to do. Who because this major thing happened and this major attack happened on US soil. Well, it's a very big deal. Oh, and right after it happened. And and I'm sure you can make the argument that maybe they shouldn't have done SmackDown that week, but in a way, I'm sure I'm kind of glad they did, to show that sense of unity and to have that display when it came to that. So I think it was I think it was a good call, at least in my opinion, and to have that, to make that declaration and everything. On kind of a more personal note, when it comes to that, obviously I was very young. I don't remember the September 11th attacks. By that point, I had just turned a year old, literally only a few days before that. So I do not remember the attacks at all. I know a lot of people very much were affected by the attacks. They either were victims of the attack, they were in the office building, they were on the planes, they were um, involved in the attack. Not involved in the attack. They were victims of the attack, or they knew people who were, or a lot of people lost family, friends, loved ones due to the attacks. Of course, very, very tragic. Very, very tragic event, and of course, one of those people being Selena Vega. Her father, I believe, was a first responder, and unfortunately lost his life in the attacks. But I do remember her. My it was either my aunt or my cousin. I'm not entirely sure. Or this is based off. Um, it's based off information that was told to me, and it's a family member I'm not super close to, who not out of any malice or anything, just not super close to them. One of the downsides of having kind of a big family was one of the people who was almost a victim. They She missed her flight, and it was the flight. I believe her flight was the one that crashed into one of the towers. Uh, and there were a lot of cases of that where people missed the bus to work, weren't able to make it to work that day, missed their plane, and essentially dodged death by mere moments. And it's insane to think how close some people were to losing their life in the attacks. One of the other people who notably almost lost their life was Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy, which is why Family Guy makes so many 9/11 jokes. He was supposed to be on one of the planes. He got super drunk the night before, got hungover, and thus missed his flight, and missed essentially catastrophe, it which to my knowledge, I don't think I've had something like that happen to me, where I've cheated death by mere moments, but I got to imagine that is something insane to think about. Yeah, so for that episode, WF put that storyline on hold because of the attacks. Moving on to other storylines around this time, some of the Alliance were beginning to kind of question Austin's leadership. One of the most notable of them being Rob Van Dam. And so Rob Van Dam and Austin would kind of have a mini feud as well. within this story. Yeah, and I believe it does lead to RVD being one of the people Austin faced at No Mercy, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously we'll get there when we get there. But we kind of see on both sides some cracks starting to form within Team WF and the Alliance. Hence Shane and both Shane and Vince. Vince comes a little bit later. We'll get to that when we get to November, December. Right now we're in September, October, um, but Shane says someone will defect from WF to the Alliance, and we'll find out who it is. But one defection that does happen is that William Regal betrays the WF and aligns himself with the Alliance. Makes sense. William Regal was part of WCW, who he was Lord Steven Regal in WCW, who so he betrays the WF, and if he loses his commissionership, but he does become the commissioner of of the Alliance, so good for him, I guess. But someone who also betrays the WF is Kurt Angle. If you thought Steve Austin joining the Alliance made no sense, and Kurt Angle's whole defecting to the Alliance somehow makes even less sense. And it's Kurt Angle, literally, if you know, oh, if you know the history, if you don't, I'll kind of give a brief crash course. So during the event known as High Incident in ECW, I believe it was High Incident in 1996. There was a segment. I'll actually look it up just to be sure. High Incident 1996. Yep. So, oh, during the event, Raven battled the Sandman, and Raven and his flock. I believe they were the flock. Raven's Nest. The flock was WCW. Who? My apologies, but Raven and his nest tied the Sandman up and placed a crown of barbed wire on his head. Sound familiar? So Kurt Angle was very offended by that and almost didn't join the pro wrestling business because of something like that. Which, fair enough, that's pretty disturbing, and I imagine if you're religious, that is very offensive. But so I guess it makes perfect sense then for Angle to join up with the people, well, in kayfabe at that almost caused him to not be in the wrestling business in the first place. But if you can believe it, it's gonna get even weirder with Angle as the invasion storyline goes on. But Kurt Angle, sure enough, betrays the WF. Before that, though, was the Milkomania segment where Angle shows up with the milk truck and the hose Ella Austin and his beer truck back in 1999 and spraying the corporation. Angle does the same thing to the Alliance with milk. Look, I imagine. I wonder which one was more gross, like being covered in the beer or being covered in the milk. Because especially when that milk starts to like spoil and everything. And as someone who um has kind of spilled old milk on themselves accidentally because I used to work in a grocery store. It does kind of smell after a little bit, but yeah, Angle sure enough sprays them. I think that's a little. I think we're a little. I think that's a bit before then, and I forget exactly when that happens. And mainly some of his I think take place before then. I just forgot to mention them. But there was that Milkomania segment. Then there was Perry Saturn's relationship with a mop, which I believe was Perry Saturn's punishment for very badly injuring a jobber or that 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 almost injured Perry Saturn. So Perry Saturn had his relationship with a mop. He dumped Terry Runnels for a mop, and she was very upset about it. So she had Raven kidnap the mop up, and he fed it to the wood chipper. Uh, Haven also like kind of mimed did like ventriloquism with the mob as it was like going in. He was making like voices for the mob. It was actually pretty funny. So R.I.P. Moppy. And I did, and funnily enough, I did see a meme of Perry Saturn with the mob when like the Coldplay incident was happening earlier on this year. And when I say this year, I mean like present day 2025. Like when the Coldplay incident happened, where the CEO was caught cheating on his wife with the HR employee, or head of HR, I should say. Someone made a meme of Perry Saturn and Moppy, and actually sent it to my brother. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up on my phone. But yeah, so Perry Saturn was in a relationship with a mop. WF used to be very, very weird. Let's see if I can find the meme. I sent it to him not too long ago. Oh, so I should have it here. If I can adjust my back as well a little bit. Uh, but yeah, so there was that. Yeah, here it is. Eh, pretty funny stuff. If my or maybe I gotta turn my light off. Um, shoot, it's still too bright. Though. Uh, but it's kind of tricky to see, but yeah. So I just figured I'd share that meme with you guys. But moving on, another storyline was that there was some tension. Like I said, some acts in Team WF. One of those was a rift between The Rock and Chris Jericho, even though they were both on the same that being Team WF, and they even won the tag team championships together because, as you kind of, because of course. But even though, excuse me, they were on the same side, they were having issues with each other. They were costing each other matches. They were kind of getting up in each other's face. They were accidentally and on purpose costing each other. So Rock and Jericho did not like each other. But could they pull together for the sake of Team WF? Time will tell. But next up, we have a romance between Tajiri and Tori Wilson. So Tori Wilson was on the side of the Alliance. Tajiri was on the side of Team WF. So it was kind of like a Romeo and Juliet kind of situation. Eventually, it does lead to Stacy Keebler, who was aligned with Tori. And we saw them team up at Invasion. If you missed my Invasion pay-per-view review, go check that out. But it does lead to Stacy turning on Tori, and Tori joins Team WF fully after that. But speaking of which, there were other defections as well. Within both within Team WF and the Alliance. And one of those being Stevie Richards defecting to who Team WF. See if I can pull up a couple other examples. Some infection. So Steve Richards went to the Alliance, which makes sense. Stevie Richards was a part of, or maybe I gotta go to the Alliance. And Steve Richards was part of ECW, so it does make sense. Him going and excuse me. And then we mentioned William Regal. Tess was initial as well. Christian would also end up joining the Alliance for a time, but I think I believe no, I think he did stay with the Alliance. Um, and Christian and did turn on Edge, which I do have listed here. That ended up happening at SummerSlam, so we're a little bit behind on that, but I'm gonna review SummerSlam anyway. But Christian does turn on Edge. He finally snaps. He's jealous of his brother because they were still brothers in storyline. He was jealous of his brother's success, so he turned on Edge and joined up with the Alliance. Kind of formed a team with Lance Storm, I believe. He kind of the primordial version of what would become what would later on become the Un-Americans. But there was that, but Christian Ivory, yeah, they defected to the Lions. So we're seeing a lot of defections as well between both sides. So Oh, quite a bit going down with that. So some dissension in the ranks, which I think is what I'm going to call this episode. We'll see how things lead up as we lead up to the winner take all match at Survivor Series. But that is for another time. But in the meantime, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, turn on those post notifications so you know every time I upload videos, so you never miss an upload, and let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on where things are progressing so far, as well as this episode of the invasion. And don't touch that dial, because as episode 4, the final episode, will be coming up in just a moment, and it will be uploaded a few hours after this one goes up. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace. Oh, citizens of the Nigelverse, it is Niger once again, and this is not only another episode of the Invasion storyline, but the final episode of the Invasion storyline. So, if you remember last time, we saw some trouble in paradise, eyes from both sides, or I guess not really paradise, more so war, or from both sides. It was put on hold temporarily due to September 11th attacks, but otherwise we see some dissension between both sides when it comes to the alliance. I also did forget to mention in the previous episode that the September 11th attacks did lead to Raw's war becoming Raw. So still Raw is war, or up until that point, but uh, but um, but after that, it would just be known as Raw, and it's been like that ever since. But now we get into the final episode of the invasion storyline, and we see who will come out on top. Will Team WCW slash ECW slash aka the Alliance come out on top, or will the WF prevail? And I'm sure you probably know the answer to that already. Let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see, for our ratings, the week of the 4th to the 8th for November, Raw is a 3.95, SmackDown is a 4.1. The week of the 11th through the 15th, Raw does a 4.1, SmackDown does a 3.6. The week of the 18th through the 22nd. Now, technically, because Survivor Series is the 18th, technically, so around here is pretty much where it ends, and everything after that is pretty much the fallout of that. So the 18th through the 22nd, that is Raw does a 4.8 and SmackDown does a 3.3. 25th through the 29th, Raw does a 4.35 and SmackDown does a 4.2. This and then heading into December 2nd through the 6th, Raw does a 4.2 and SmackDown does a 4.2 as well. So they both do a 4.2. The week of the 9th through the 13th, Raw does a 4.65 and SmackDown does a 3.6. The 16th through the 20th, Raw does a 4 and SmackDown does a 3.8. The 23rd to the 27th, so around Christmas time, Raw does a 3.2 and SmackDown does a 3.9. And then finally, we just have the rating for Raw, which is a 2.4. Or this episode was kind of more of a best of kind of episode for the year, so kind of recapping. And of course, this is where it ends off, because that's where the year ends off. So the next SmackDown wouldn't be until technically the following year, that being 2002. So that would be into the new year. But yeah, so Raw's a 2.4. So the episode where they're recapping is pretty much the lowest rated, which it makes sense because it's not really an episode; it's more of like a best of. But otherwise, as for the actual shows proper, we see that at Raw, uh, uh, only twice does it dip into the threes, and then only for this last episode of the year does it dip into the two. But otherwise, they mainly stay within the fours, and things kind of go kind of stay up a little slightly from when the invasion ends off. So, technically, the Raw right after the invasion is after the invasion wraps up is 4.8, and then we see it stay mainly within the fours, and then as the year closes out, then it kind of dips down. As for SmackDown, on only three times, as you can see here, does it go above four. The rest of the time, it stays within the threes. He's so SmackDown kind of on the lower end of things when it comes to that. Okay, so as for notable storylines going on around this time, what exactly is going on as we wind down the invasion? For starters, of course, that Survivor Series is winner takes all control of the company, all of that. The Alliance, Team and of course the WF comes out on top. Which to the surprise of absolutely no one. And so the WWF is victorious, is and essentially after that the alliance is no more. They essentially dissolve. Now obviously we'll get to this more when I do my Survivor Series review, but technically I have reviewed that match already. Team WF versus Team Alliance. I reviewed it, I believe. If not last year, it was a couple years ago. If you haven't already, I would recommend checking out that review. It's probably got some age on it. In fact, let me see when I reviewed that. But there's that, and almost everything else we have kind of in terms of storylines, notable storylines that is, of note that I mentioned, kind of is in the fallout of that. So the winner takes all is like the huge kind of ending when it comes to that. But as for what else is going on, Test won the Battle Royal at Survivor Series, so he gets immunity from being fired. Or, and so, thankfully, he is safe from being fired. The rest of the alliance, though, not so much. A lot of them are fired in kayfabe. A number of them, most of not all of them, would wind up coming back. So I guess it's not all bad, but yeah. So, the alliance essentially punished for their transgressions and their misdeeds. It's as I'm also still trying to find when I reviewed Team. Okay, so it was back in 2023. Yep. So go check out my review of Team WF versus Team Alliance at Survivor Series, and I'll give my new fresh take on it when we get to that match. But Test has immunity. Several titles at this point are either retired or unified. I had, the Intercontinental, for example, the Intercontinental Championship was unified with the United States Championship, and the United States Championship wouldn't be active for a few years. Then the Light Heavyweight Championship was essentially retired as it was unified with the Cruiserweight Championship. If, eventually, he, uh, the World Heavyweight Championship would be retired for the time being. It would be brought back. So several titles are retired slash unified. At Survivor Series, Angle turns on the Alliance. So it turns out Kurt Angle was kind of a double agent for WF and the Alliance. Okay, hey, I guess weirder has happened in the storyline. My theory is that that's a retcon because Kurt Angle being in the alliance, considering what happened with him and ECW at High Incident 1996, where he almost didn't go into the pro wrestling business because of what happened. I kind of touched upon it in the previous episode of the invasion storyline, and that it didn't make sense for him to be there in the first place. So I do wonder if that was like a retcon. On It's like, oh, Kurt Angle. I see Kurt Angle being there doesn't really make sense, but it's okay because he was let's see, he was a double agent. Yeah, double agent. But and do I think it was on purpose? I actually don't know. Like, I can't say for certain, but part of me feels like it probably was a retcon. They probably like, this kind of weird, it's kind of dumb. Screw it, he's a double agent. Uh, the next thing I mentioned several kayfabe members being fired. Ric Flair returns. He literally returns the Raw after Survivor Series. Rick where were you during the invasion storyline? I mean, one of the criticisms was a lack of major star power for the Alliance in the storyline. I think that's a big example of that. Where was Ric Flair during the whole invasion storyline? And why wasn't Ric Flair the owner of WCW? It would have made more sense for him to be there. But we'll get to that more when I do my final analysis. When it's all said and done, that will be coming out next week after I finish reviewing the pay-per-views. But yeah, where was Ric Flair during the actual invasion storyline? Well, you got me. Yeah, but and next up is that at right after the invasion storyline, everything essentially goes back to normal. It's pretty much like a sitcom because Vince turns heel. He goes back to being a heel. Now that he doesn't have to worry about the alliance anymore. And Austin goes back to being a face and essentially faces little to no repercussions for his actions. He's about to be fired by Vince, but that's when Ric Flair shows up and intervenes. So Austin, after betraying the WWF and leading the alliance against them, essentially faces no consequences for his actions. Wonderful. Great. Great. Hey, so remember, kids, it's as long as you have someone to bail you you don't have to face any consequences for your actions, and just have an old rich dude bail you out. Which actually hits closer to home now, the more that I think about it. Moving on. And next up, the Hardys tease a breakup. They actually face off one-on-one with Lita, special guest referee at Vengeance. The Hardys wouldn't fully split it until the next year, where Matt would turn on Jeff, but and become Matt Hardy version 1 and everything. But they are kind of teasing it for the most part. So having Edge and Christian split and teasing a Hardy Boy split in the same year. Bold choice, WF. Very bold choice. But the last one is that at Vengeance 2001, Chris Jericho beats The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin in the same night to become the first ever WWE or Undisputed WF champion. And something that's been brought up several times to this point. And Chris Jericho proceeds to then become a third wheel in his own feud, especially when Triple H comes back and eventually takes the titles from him. But Jericho does wind up pulling off that feat, which admittedly is pretty cool to see. Jericho, someone who had been in WF for quite a bit now, been kind of a big player within the invasion storyline, even kind of before then. So to see him get his due at the end of the year was admittedly pretty cool. Well, and it's even crazier to talk about it now that in present day 2025, Jericho might be on his way back. Apparently, his AEW contract is expiring soon, and he's expected to potentially come back in a wrestling capacity. Possibly. Do I think he should? Not really. But he could be on his way back. Yeah, so Jericho becomes the first ever undisputed champion, and it was because he did hold both belts. Else this was before, or they unified the championships into one championship, which will become the WWE Undisputed Championship, with the different design and everything. And that wouldn't be introduced till I believe the next year. So we still have some ways to go on that. But Jericho does become the champion there. So. Props to him, I guess. Yes, but, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for the invasion storyline. So, we saw the good, the bad, and the very weird when it comes to this storyline. And I'll go over it more in my final analysis, but I think when it comes to this storyline, were there plenty of things they did right? Yeah, I'd say so. But unfortunately, there was a lot of things that did go wrong on both on WWE's end, which, and by that I mean like directly their fault, and some stuff that was kind of beyond their control. But um, but a part of me, actually, I'll save it for the final analysis. But nevertheless, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the conclusion of the invasion storyline. Was very interesting to look back on at this time. time, especially after having done the Monday Night Wars, was to see how WF essentially treated WCW and ECW afterwards was it was something to see. But nevertheless, if you did enjoy the series and want to see more just like it, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, turn on those post notifications so you never miss an upload, and let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on my coverage of the Invasion storyline. Did you enjoy it? What could I improve on? Let me know. And what other series, storylines, stuff like that, do you guys want me to cover on the channel? But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace. Alright, hello, citizens of the Nigelverse. It is Niger once again. So much for that early upload. But, nevertheless, admittedly, because of some issues I ran into, this is now the third time I'm trying to record this. So, hopefully third time's a charm. But, nevertheless, it is time to finally get this monkey off my back, fully lift this weight off my shoulders, as we do our final analysis of the Invasion storyline. Real quick before we get into the subject of this video here and talk about what we need to talk about, as you can see by the categories here. I've decided that I will be doing 3 different compilations next week when it comes to this review or my look at the series, my coverage of the series. The first the will be just the episodes themselves. So I did 4 episodes of the Invasion. I talked about where things were going: April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and November of 2001, um, and so we kind of went from there. So, those episodes will be compiled and they'll be up on the channel. Then I'm doing a full pay per view coverage of that time of all the pay per views I reviewed for around this time period. So that being Backlash all the way through Vengeance, even the stuff that's not necessarily Invasion. But then the third compilation I decided I am going to do just an Invasion storyline compilation when it comes to the pay-per-view reviews. So, more condensed, I guess, version, but it's really more so the actual alliance, not alliance, well, yeah, alliance, but also invasion. So I feel like I interchange those a lot. I should stop really stop doing that. Full like invasion specific storyline pay-per-views. So that being invasion all the way through Survivor Series. So stay tuned for those, though. Those will most likely be coming in the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, we got our final analysis here. We've got our sections, and we're going to talk about each of them. So we have best and worst pay per view, or I guess my least favorite pay per view, least and most favorite pay per view. We have the WWF and the Alliance MVPs, that being who was some of the best among either side, and what went right and what went wrong when it comes to the storyline. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting with the best pay per view, and I have it up on screen here so you can follow along with me. For best pay per view, I went for Survivor Series. Admittedly, a lot of it is off the strength of the winner takes all match between the WF and the Alliance. And the fact that the show is built all around it, they really built it up in a major way. It was a major focal point. The fact that we had like the championship unification matches, everything felt like it wrapped up nicely. Some stuff left open end so that they can have some stuff for vengeance, such as when Matt took on Jeff, or more importantly, when the world titles were unified. And they were crowning the first ever undisputed champion, but. Yeah, so I think overall I went with Survivor Series. Also, do keep in mind these are totally and completely my own opinions and my own thoughts. So if you agree, that is great. If you disagree, that is also fine. And it's definitely up to you guys in the comments. In fact, yeah, let me know in the comments. But yeah, so these are all my opinions. If you disagree with any of these, that is completely fine. But next up, for the worst pay per view, or I guess my least favorite pay per view, I opted for Rebellion. and admittedly, A, it was kind of a toss up between rebellion and insurrection, and B, I can't really bully the Heat pay-per-views too much. Those were the UK shows. So those were kind of in a way glorified house shows. Not really a whole lot of meat on the bones when it comes to storyline continuity. It's still within story, but it doesn't really fully advance anything, and it's not even really treated as canon. So, admittedly, me going all in and like um and really harping on these too much, that I feel like that's not really fair. Here, but I think between the two, which one I liked more, I think I edged it out a bit more to insurrection, and but so that leaves kind of rebellion as technically the worst, or I guess my least favorite pay-per-view. That's why I try to avoid using best or worst in stuff like this, because as that's not really as apt. But next up for the WF Montel Vontavious Porter. No, I'm kidding. For the WF MVP, I decided to go with Kurt Angle. Admittedly, there's probably a few people I could have chose from, but I chose Kurt Angle, even though, yes, he was part of the Alliance for a brief time, but I still chose him as the WF MVP because, A, Kurt was still putting on some fantastic matches during this time, but also, in terms of his arc, we see his arc unfolding, him going after the championships, becoming or WF champion, becoming WCW champion, I've been referring to it as the WCW World Championship this whole time, but really it's more so more so the WCW Championship, is what it's called. But nevertheless, excuse me. So, I went with Kurt Angle, however, and truth be told, Kurt, seeing his arc was very interesting, and crazy thing is only his second, technically his second calendar year in the WF, and this is the storyline he's got, that being, the invasion story. But seeing Kurt's arc and seeing him be kind of in a way the main one opposing the alliance, and before he joins, that is. But seeing him be one of the main ones opposing the alliance, even more so than in The Rock in a way, it was very interesting. And so I ultimately decided I would go with Kurt Angle. Well, as for the Alliance MVP, I went with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And yeah, it might not have made a lot of sense for him to be a part of this story, or be a part of the Alliance, at least in the storyline. Um, but he was still admittedly still pretty entertaining in his role. Oh, and he had an interesting arc as well. Oh, especially the threat of him becoming more and more unhinged as he continued in his run, uh, especially as the WF champion, which he spent a good portion of the time as WF champion, and he lost it briefly, of course, but he got it right back. But seeing how Austin just becomes more and more unhinged, and more and more paranoid, like, and really trying to assert himself over the other members of the alliance, and really the dynamic that created, I think, was pretty cool and pretty interesting to see. So I went with Austin for the alliance. As for what went right, because not everything went wrong with the invasion storyline. And there's the winner takes all match. Very very awesome match, and great way, I think, to end the storyline as a whole. Well, not everything was perfect, but to see it end off in such a big way, I think was very interesting to see. Was very great to see, and hey, at least at least you end off well. And the way they built towards it not just as throughout the show itself, that being Survivor Series, but even all throughout, like the fact that it comes down to this, the amount of weight they put behind it, and put behind the whole, this is the end of a legacy. One legacy is dying, either WF or WCW. I think that was very well done. Um, And now also says certain stars getting pushed. So that includes people like Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, RVD from the Alliance, Booker T to an extent, and in the Alliance. And I did like how it wasn't just the same people. They kind of experimented with who they pushed and everything, and as much as it kind of messed up the Alliance, and there were certain stars that really stood out and that the crowd were really into, and so they very much played up on that. Then hell, even Test got a push, which was cool, and I kind of mentioned it in my Survivor Series review. If you haven't already, go check out that review, as well as any other reviews, or if you want to wait for the compilation, that's fine as well. But yeah, so that was cool to see. Now, when I say consistent storylines, I mean that a lot of the storyline threads, some of them were abandoned as time went on, but others, I think, stayed. We saw the thread. We saw it continue to build and build before, or we saw most of them be resolved, whether at Survivor Series or otherwise. As not all of them had the most satisfying conclusion, but a lot of them did have conclusions and or constant threats even in the match, such as Jericho and The Rock, their kind of rivalry and their issues that they had. Austin and The Rock, Austin's dynamic with Mr. McMahon and how that shifted. It to an extent, even though I'm gonna complain about it next, Shane versus Vince, and which had been bubbling even before WrestleMania, and then really showed itself once the invasion storyline got underway. So I think those aspects, them really building those, I think really helped uh, really helped keep things together and keep things connected and keep that continuity in a way. Like I said, not every storyline throughout got that treatment. Unfortunately, that's kind of just the nature of things. But to see a good portion of them, and more specifically like the really important ones, I think was pretty good. And then finally, Jr. and Paul Heyman as a commentary duo. A lot of people feel it's a very underrated commentary duo. And for the most part, I'm inclined to agree. They made for a really good match on commentary. Yeah, having them kind of ping off each other, having Paul Heyman be the one with the antics, while Jr. being the straight man for him, just like what he did for Jerry Lawler. Or except her, and it's to the point where you kind of miss them once Vengeance came about and Paul Heyman was fired in storyline. And you did kind of miss them, but yeah, pairing them together, I think, made for a very interesting dynamic. But as for what went wrong, on what they definitely could have did it better, and this is where we really get into the meat and potatoes of things. For starters, here's the big one: the lack of star power. And I put Alliance in parentheses because it mainly was on the Alliance side, but there was some missing from the WF side of things. Now, not all of these were completely by choice. We had a lot of people either on the shelf or not there. Her, uh, her Triple H tore his quad. He missed the invasion storyline. Rikishi injured his shoulder. He missed the invasion storyline. Chris Benoit injured. I believe he injured his shoulder as well, so he was out. Eddie Guerrero had gotten released. He's Shawn Michaels wouldn't be back into the fold until next year. He was still in retirement at this time. A lot of big players on the WF side. I'd and a lot of, but I think the majority of the big players were missing from the Alliance side. Especially when it came to WCW, who not buying out the Time Warner contracts, and kind of just letting them expire without bringing them in. And I think was a huge disservice. So we got no Goldberg, no Bret Hart. Admittedly, Bret Hart was retired by this time. No Goldberg, no Bret Hart, no NWO. All these big players missing. No Sting, although Sting intentionally didn't want to be. He signed and he left for TNA and everything. But and no Jeff Jarrett hit as well. So all these big names and no Scott Steiner. Or the list goes on essentially all these big names that were missing from the alliance side really uh really I think was a big thing that kind of shot the alliance in the foot in a lot of ways, and I think it really hurt them overall in the long run. And what also hurt them was that the alliance looked weak at a lot of points. The alliance and looked strong at some times. They won out sometimes, such as gaining Austin, gaining Angle, having the WF Championship in their ranks for pretty much the entirety of Austin being a part of the alliance. And but otherwise, they were not made to look as strong as the WWF, at least not on a completely consistent basis. Is the next one too much McMahon, and a lot of it felt like Shane and Stephanie versus Vince. Featuring WF and WCW and ECW, there was way too much McMahon, and having Shane and Stephanie be authority figures for the alliance sounds cool on paper, and admittedly, he and admittedly, if Triple H was healthy, him having to choose between his wife, who's in the Alliance, or the WWF, I think would have made for an interesting dynamic. But it didn't feel like WWE versus WCW slash ECW. It felt like McMahon versus McMahon, just featuring some of these people on these rosters. So that was so that hampered things a lot. And they definitely could have fixed that for sure. And we'll get to that in just a moment. And the last one was weird defections. Why was Austin part of the alliance? Why was Angle part of the alliance? Austin, the man who had been famously fired by WCW for being unmarketable, which, I mean, to be fair, Austin himself admits that was the case back then. But the man who was fired by WCW, who spent like a cup of coffee in ECW, who admittedly it was a very important cup of coffee because we saw the beginnings of the Stone Cold character before it went full blown by the time he got to the WWF, and then Kurt Angle, the man who almost didn't join pro wrestling because of ECW, who why did they defect over to the alliance? And there were all kinds of defections. Why was Christian in the alliance? And surprisingly, Jericho and Big Show stayed part of the WWF. So kind of weird in that regards, and I get it. It's to kind of fill things out, kind of in a way, due to the lack of star power. But the fact that you had to bring them over at all to kind of beef up the alliance in a way like that, I think was very. It was very weird. It was very interesting. It was very telling as well. Here's what I'll say. A lot of people feel that this is the worst storyline in WF history, or at least one of the worst, one of the most mishandled storylines in WWE's history. And truth be told, there's been a lot of them. Do I think this is the worst storyline WWE's ever done? No. Do I think this is even the worst long-term storyline WWE's ever done? No. Oh, was this mishandled? I would say yeah. Were there a lot of things that he could have done differently? Excuse me, absolutely. He now were they kind of handcuffed by some of the circumstances surrounding them in a way. But were there workarounds to those? Yeah. Yeah, I feel like mismanaged is more appropriate. Like I said, I don't think this is the worst. Would I even call it bad? I guess I guess you can leave that up to interpretation. And it's bad in a lot of aspects. Because when you look at the totality of it, but there is some gems in the rubble pile. Also, now what in fact would I have done differently? He we will get to that in just a moment. So I'm gonna put an edit here. All right, so I am back now. As for what would I do differently in the storyline? Well, for starters, I would swap out the authority figures. Vince staying in charge of WF was fine. I'm not against that. Mick Foley was still there. He was still commissioner. I forgot to mention he was at Survivor Series, and it seemed like a work shoot almost, saying he'd rather be he at the actual Survivor Series the uh in the Greensboro Coliseum. Instead, he was at WF New York. Uh, but but nevertheless, so Vince staying in charge of WE, or WF, I should say, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. As for the alliance, having Shane and Stephanie there felt pretty weird, admittedly. So I think I would swap those out. For the WCW side of things, I would do either Ric Flair or Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff would be there the following year, and Ric Flair would be there literally the Raw after, which was really a kick in the teeth. At least the Raw after Survivor Series, that is, his when he was revealed as Vince McMahon's partner. But having those two be in place, uh, and then having Paul Heyman be in charge of ECW, I think the dynamic it would be a bit more interesting, especially considering the history of not just Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff, all them being competitors and everything, but also kind of the history of Vince and Ric Flair, especially with Ric Flair being a WF superstar at one point. And the fact that this is the first time in almost a decade people had seen him, or about a decade, I would say. eh, yeah, just about a decade that people had seen him in a WWE in a WWF ring. So having that be, I might just stick to calling WWE. Yeah, now screw with the Alliance storylines over, but yeah. So I would have either Ric Flair or Eric Bischoff be on the side of WCW, having um having Paul Heyman be on the side of ECW, who you could probably still have him do commentary, yeah, but have like someone in the WCW camp also join the commentary booth. Yes, 3-man commentary teams are either hit or miss, but I think it potentially could have worked out. You probably weren't going to get Tony Schiavone because, yeah, he kind of fell off the face of the map for a while there, but yeah, get someone from WCW, get someone from ECW, and have them join Jim Ross in commentary, at least in the wake of Jerry Lawler's absence. I think would be cool. You can add Paul Heyman there from Backlash up into and through King of the Ring before the invasion storyline officially starts, and I guess the invasion pay per view. But then from there, have someone else as authority. Then obviously this is the big one on get I buy out the contracts. I bring the boys in and actually treat them with adequate respect, which it seems like a very novel concept for Vince McMahon. And yeah, treat them with respect, like actually have them be a big deal, have the alliance feel like an actual big deal, and have it be a true clash. The thing about how I'll use this analogy, if for those of you who have played Marvel vs. Capcom, they essentially bring together the best of both worlds. Well, it's the Marvel side and the DC side. Not the DC side. Could you imagine Marvel DC crossover game? Next discussion review or discussion video idea? Who knows? But but in Marvel vs. Capcom, showing the best of both sides. Capcom has Ryu, Ken, Bison, and Akuma, and not even just the Street Fighter characters. It also has Morrigan from the Darkstalkers, Strider, Mega Man before they had to switch to Zero. Thanks, Nintendo. And eventually you had characters like Nemesis, Frank. What? For um, um, Hank West as I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. But having characters like that on the Capcom side, but then Marvel side, you had Spider-Man, you had Hulk, Iron Man, and Captain America, the X-Men, and and so really showing the best of both sides, and I think that's what this could have and should have been. And now if you want to have defections between each side, I'm not totally against that, but make it make sense. And at least, that's all I ask. Just make it make sense, and don't have a definitive heel or face side. Have both sides be kind of mixed. Have a mix of heels and faces. That way, each side I kind of blurs the line, and a kind of clash hash it leads to some interesting dynamics within either camp, and then seeing them clash and seeing them clash over ideals and seeing the true companies clash, I think very much could be interesting, and would make for an interesting dynamic. But that's just me. That's kind of just how I would do it. But that is going to do it. We have finally put the invasion to bed, and now I will no longer be haunted by it once I go to bed, but which will probably be admittedly very very soon because I'm admittedly pretty tired. I don't know if you can tell, but in the meantime, that is going to do it for this final analysis. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, turn on those post notifications so you know every time I upload a video so you never miss an upload, and let me know in the comment section below your thoughts in total of not just this final analysis and this video, but also the invasion storyline as a whole. Your thoughts on it and your thoughts on my coverage of it. Was there things I could have did better? Or there's definitely things I could have did better. Was there anything I missed? It's like, admittedly, I wish I had more time, or at least I managed my time more effectively. I didn't even get to watch the week to week stuff, which kind of sucked. And I feel like me putting stuff off for so long and saving it for this final stretch, because I wanted to get it done before the year was over, I think really hampered. If I had budgeted my time a lot better, or I could have turned out way better. I said I wasn't going to make the same mistake as I did for the Monday Night Wars analysis, and lo and behold, that is exactly what happened. So I do profusely apologize for that. As for another analysis like this, admittedly, it's probably going to be a while. Oh, just kind of recovering from this. I wanted to do the invasion right after I did the Monday Night Wars, because as the invasion in a lot of ways feels like the follow or the aftermath of the Monday Night Wars, or is in that way. So, I think reviewing it when I did, it made sense, but I wish I budgeted things better. And I'm definitely not doing anything from 2001 for a while. I'm admittedly, after all of these reviews and everything, I'm admittedly kind of sick of WF in 2001. Now, will we come back to WF in 2001 at some point? Of course, there's still some unfinished business, but otherwise, yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit on that as well. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace.